What's up, guys? Welcome to the Red and Gold Standard podcast, where we are previewing the 49ers and the Seahawks live from maybe not sunny Santa Clara this weekend. Zach couldn't be here tonight, so I am hosting alongside my main man from Nothing But Niners, Mr. Mike Andrews. Mike, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Yeah, what's going on, baby, man? This is going to be a fun one, man. Previewing probably the most exciting, I don't even know if we can call this a rivalry because the Seahawks seem to have our number, right? But this one's going to mean something. This one's for first place in the division right here in week 2. So I'm ready to break it all down, man. I got my smoke. I got a little bit of something to sip on over here. Ready to have some fun, man.
There we go. Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't think week 1 went the way that anybody thought it was going to go, particularly for the 49ers and that torrential downpour. But more so, I mean, Seattle getting a huge win over the Denver Broncos, who's, anybody going into that game would have been like, oh, man, Russ, he's got Jerry Jeudy now. He's got an offensive line. He's got Cortland Sutton. He's got Javonte Williams. He's got a good defense. Like, there's no way that the Seahawks are going to beat him, right? And that's exactly what happened. Surprising to me. What do you even say? What do you think of that game?
So you're talking about the Bears game? Oh no! Oh, I'm sorry. The Seattle game.
The Broncos losing to the Seahawks.
Yeah. So I was watching that game and I'm like, oh man, like they started hot. They started really hot, right? And as the game went on, it wasn't that Seattle's offense did anything special. I don't think they did anything in the second half at all, if I'm not mistaken. But it was more about their defense. It started looking like a Pete Carroll type defense with all these people that most of us can't name, right? So that lets you know that, as much as we hate him, Pete Carroll's a pretty damn good coach, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
It's going to come down to things like that. That's going to be the difference, the main difference. And this matchup here on Sunday is going to be what Pete Carroll can do. And we know how Kyle respects that defense. As soon as he became a head coach, right away, he said, I want someone from that defense because that defense is the hardest to prepare for. And if I can get that on my team, coupled with what I think I can do on offense, we'll have a pretty good team. So we know Kyle respects that defense. We know that Pete Carroll seems to have Kyle's number up until this point. So this is going to be a good one. That I wish I could say that there's something I'm worried about as far as Seattle's offense against our defense, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But that game was one that was fun to watch. And not just fun to watch. It was just like the emotions, the up and down, because here I am cheering for the Broncos, like, come on, Rush, you can do this. And then they run the kicker out there for a 67-yard field goal. And I got into a big debate with that. I want to get your opinion on this, right? We were doing the show, was on with Wayne and Peachy and Mose, and they were talking about how Russell Wilson has to override. Oh, no, I was on with Gina. I'm sorry. Russell Wilson has to override the head coach and say, no, we're going to go for this here. What do you think about that? If you're Russell Wilson in that situation, look at what they gave up to acquire you. Look at the contract they gave you and all that versus that's a new head coach in his first game. How do you handle that versus what should have happened if they're not the same?
I mean, Russell has experience with that, right? With Pete Carroll calling that passing play down at the goal line when he probably should have given it to Marshawn Lynch. So there's definitely precedent for Russell Wilson being on the side of the ball that doesn't make the right play. Just from the pure numbers, you're talking about a dude attempting the second longest field goal ever attempted. And that's just because somebody ran Seabass out there to try to kick a 69-yarder back in the day, like just for shits and giggles. The percentages say that 4th and 5 would have been better for the offense to stay out there than to attempt a 67-yard field goal. I think that's pretty clear. You get into a little bit of a pickle when you're talking about Russell overriding the coach. Russell's new to the situation, even though he does have cachet as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, as a guy that's, been viewed as a top 10 quarterback for the bulk of his career. And then you have Nathaniel Hackett, who it's his first game coaching. Now, Russ is new to the locker room. Nathaniel Hackett's, new to the locker room. They kind of have to work, at least in appearances, in sync. If Russell undermines the coach and it doesn't work out, then you have a whole other list of problems for the entire season. right? I think Russell did the right thing by acquiescing to his coach. Now that doesn't mean that Russell Wilson can't go to his coach and say, "Hey, coach, like I really think that we should go for this or whatever." And if the coach overrides him, then he's like, "Cool, I got your back, coach." And it didn't work out, right? That happens sometimes. But make your opinion known without undercutting the chain of command. I think that that's the right way to do it. I think that Russell Wilson knows that. I think that Russell Wilson, for as cheesy as he is, at the end of the day, he is a team guy. He's out there to play for wins, and he's trying to get to Super Bowls and things like that. It's a tough spot. I thought it was a kind of a cowardly coaching call. It's right up there, I thought, with the Sunday night game where you have Mike McCarthy punting when you're down 2 scores with like 6 minutes left. That's another coward play. And I don't think that that's going to win you any fans inside of your own locker room. It could have just been nerves from the first game. Maybe he thought, that his kicker could actually hit it from that far. I don't know, but to me, I for it.
The strangest part was there was a timeout right before. So Seattle calls the timeout. The kicker got the freebie and he missed it to the left. Right. So it's got to be like, all right, guys, like now I think it comes down to the kicker's call, right? He looks at the sideline. I'm imagining this is how it played out. You get the timeout. He still boots it. He misses it to the left. He probably looks at the sideline and says, I think I got it. You know what I'm saying? If that's what happened, and I don't know that to be true, but if that's what happened and you're asking your kicker over your quarterback what you should do, that is a bad knock on the head coach. And then he tries to come back with the revisionist history. Well, after further review, yeah, we definitely should have kept the offense on the, like, dude, of course, if you made it, you wouldn't be saying the same thing. So, it's just interesting how it all played out, man. But to be honest with
you, there's 2 ways to call a game, right? There's 2 ways to call a game. You either do the coward coaching plays, right? Or you're over aggressive. And one is not going to win you any favors, right? The other will get you a lot more leeway with your players. It's why Dan Campbell is so liked in Detroit, because that dude will take risks. He's like, fake punt in the second quarter? Sure, why the fuck not? And that's your players being like, hell yeah, coach is going for the jugular, right? Rather than, man, what's coach doing? I feel like the offense could have been out there, and that's, again, that's something that they're going to have to work through. I do think that Russ did the right thing, but it was really surprising to see that. It was surprising to see that much fight out of Seattle. Now, here's my thing. How much of that was because they had a lot of time to prepare, and this was Russell Wilson and his first game against them, and Pete Carroll being like, hey, I really need this one from you guys. All you vets need to go out there, hook it up, right? Because, I saw some of the stuff that Richard Sherman was tweeting about that game, and it was wild. Russ was not well liked in that locker room at all. So that was a big one for Seattle to really get back at Russell Wilson. And I think that emotion played a lot of that. And having the time to prepare for your week 1 opponent also played a big part in that. Now they have to come to the 49ers, to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, after the 49ers got stung by bad weather and a bad football team and making bad plays, really self-induced, really bad plays. And they're coming in on a short week. And so they're feeling themselves a little bit, and they're going to have to take on a pissed off 49ers team. Let's start there, man. How do you think the 49ers recover from that Bears game?
I think they recover much better than most people think. There was a lot of outrage on Twitter for the following 48 hours after the game, mainly because the Seahawks ended up winning, right? So now people were even more upset, as if the Seahawks outcome had something to do with how we played in week 1, right? People were bashing the offensive line. There was a ton of national Trey Lance hate. We lost Elijah Mitchell, right? Dre Greenlaw. We tout ourselves on having the best linebacking core in the NFL, and the linebacking core, I'm not going to say they cost us this game, but they are the ones that had these penalties that kept the drives going that they scored on. So it was kind of a gut check, a reality check. Let me phrase it different. Just because you guys have the roster and the coaches don't mean you win these games. You got to go out there and get it. But the good thing is this is why I say I think they recover well. After the All-22 comes out, understanding some plays better, plays that I saw Aaron Banks getting killed for later on, you go back and see the play was never really designed to go that way. He actually did his job. I think the interior of our offensive line performed way better than what people initially said, and then the tackling in, as far as the linebackers and all that goes, and landing on guys that are sliding at your feet and stuff like that, the weather had something to do with that as well. But I think it's going to come down to, we just have to focus. We have to play our style of ball and stop hurting ourselves. I don't think the Niners come back out there with double-digit penalties again. I don't think the Niners go out there and have over 100 yards worth of penalties. Now, I understand that 2 of the penalties were declined because they got first downs on those plays, so that's why I said over 100 yards. But I think that this will be a much better game for the 49ers, even though they're saying it's an 80% chance of rain right now.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, right? It's like the rain is going to follow them to Santa Clara. That's another thing. It's not, even if it is raining in Santa Clara, it's definitely not going to be anywhere near what it was in Chicago. I mean, that was preposterous rain. That was monsoon type rain. They're definitely not going to see that. Now, in terms of the rain and some of the penalties and stuff, like you were talking about landing on guys. Yeah, I think that first roughing the passer on Dre Greenlaw where Fields went out of bounds. I mean, that is about as soft as it gets. The offensive pass interference against Brandon Ayuk, about as soft as it can get, right? The face mask, Greenlaw's got to clean that up. He should know better, right? When you're in a pile like that, don't grab the runner, grab your dudes, right? Bolster your guys because they already have a hold of him. The only thing that you're going to end up grabbing is somewhere where they're not, and that's usually going to be somewhere where you don't want to be grabbing. So just grab your guys and push the pile back, and you're going to get forward progress. They're going to stop it. You don't necessarily have to like jump on them and take them to the ground. The plays that I thought were very interesting were, the second roughing the passer. I think it was on Azeez Al-Shire when he ended up getting hurt. Part of that might have been the rain, but the other part of that is Justin Fields got down so fast that it was almost impossible to react to. I mean, that was preposterously fast, and there has to be some type of give and take, right? Because you want to protect your quarterback. But Justin Fields is clearly a runner at that point. And running backs don't give themselves up like that. I feel like if there's no intention to pass or whatever, there has to be some happy medium. Or at least, at the very least, the NCAA bans the Kenny Pickett fake slide because it's just too out of control, right? There needs to be some type of adjustment to how fast Justin Fields was able to give himself up. I mean, that was, again, almost unreactable, and you're asking a defender to pull up at the last minute. If he doesn't, at least touch him down, what if he doesn't go down? The fake slide might be illegal in the NCAA, but we don't know if it is in the NFL yet, and somebody's going to test that at some point. And I'd rather they not test that against the 49ers.
Yeah, and just really quick on this dark cloud, the rain cloud that is following the 49ers. If you go to the breakdown of the hours, it's actually the lowest percentage. It's 50% and less between 1 and 3 o'clock. So knock on wood, knock on whatever you got over there, we might be okay throughout the game. A little bit of precipitation before and after. It's looking like 50% chance during the game time. Now that's right now. Obviously, these things can change leading into the game and all that. So as of right now, though, the lowest percentage throughout the day is during the time of kickoff, other than 3 a.m. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not an actual full-on rain. I mean, if it's sprinkling, again, that's not enough to where it's going to saturate the football. It's going to chew up the field condition or whatever. That's not going to be as much of an effect as what we saw in Chicago. If you have a full-out rain, then definitely you got to worry about it, and that would be something unfortunate. But like you said, the forecast is looking like it's probably going to rain for a little bit and then ease off. And right. That's to the advantage of the 49ers. Going into this game, going into the home opener, you expect the team to come out on all cylinders. You expect the coaches to go back through practice. But going into the game, there are some key components missing. Like you talked about, Elijah Mitchell, he's injured. He's got the MCL sprain. He's going to be out for like 6 to 8 weeks. You look at George Kittle, who still isn't practicing, who still is nursing that groin. We still don't have Jimmy Ward, and I know that Hufanga played outstanding, and positives to George Odom for not having to hear his name, which is what you want from your center fielder out there. You don't want to hear his name. But who picks up the slack in these key areas? I'm looking at, is it Jordan Mason? The 49ers went out and signed Marlon Mack and put him on the practice squad. Is he maybe an activation? I know that was somebody that 49ers fans kind of wanted them to trade for before he tore his Achilles in Indianapolis. Like, who's going to pick up the slack? Because Trey Lance can't be back there without any running game. He's just going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And I definitely don't want him carrying the ball as much as he did either. So who's the guy?
Well, to that point about Lance carrying the ball really quick, I was just listening to Kyle on KNBR, and he said, look, Lance running is going to be a part of his game. That's how he got to where he is. That's how his name was, thrown into the highlights and all from what he was doing in college with his legs. So Kyle is making it clear, and even Lance at the podium following the game, like they were like, or should you lay off of some of the running and all that? He's like, no. I understand what you guys are talking about, but this is football. It's how I play, so they're going to continue to run the ball with Trey Lance. Hopefully we don't see things like what we saw in Denver, right? Every 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 or whatever, any 3rd and 1 that Denver had against Seattle, they were lined up in shotgun. Like, you're not even giving the illusion that you could stack the line, or, you know what I mean? Like, it was just so weird to see that. I hope that we don't see things like that happening. But I'm looking forward to this game. This is going to be a fun one. I think Trey Lance will do some running. But let me ask you this really quick. You mentioned Marlon Mack, right? We signed him to the practice squad. Is it insulting if he comes in there and is getting touches before guys like Ty Davis Price or even Jordan Mason?
Maybe insulting for those players that feel like they should be getting the touches. But if Marlon Mack's coming in and he's clearly the best guy, I mean, this team has shown time and time again, particularly when it comes to running backs, if you're not good, they're not going to play you. If you're not effective, they're not going to play you. That was evident the minute that they sent Trey Sermon packing. And John Lynch can go out there and say, oh, man, he was one of our best players in camp. Y'all cut him. So he wasn't that good. If Ty Davis Price and Jordan Mason aren't showing what it is, and we already know that Jeff Wilson Jr. is like a running back 2 at his very peak and likely just a running back 3, somebody you bring in for spot downs and, light duty, that if Marlon Mack is better than those guys, then you got to play Marlon Mack. Egos aside, the players know who the better guy is on the field, right? And there's kind of like an understanding that, hey, what's best for the team, we're gonna do that. Marlon Mack is a former 1,000-yard back in the NFL, right? He's coming off an Achilles injury. He signed with the Texans, and might not have played well with them, but you're talking about a guy that is still fairly young, is still, he has that talent. It's just, will the physicality catch back up? And if this is far enough removed from the Achilles, does he start showing more of that former 1,000-yard form? We all know that Kyle Shanahan can make a lot of running backs look good, and maybe Marlon Mack is the type of running back that he needs, particularly just from a speed perspective. Marlon Mack's going to be faster than Ty Davis Price and faster than Jordan Mason. You need that guy that can kind of be a change of pace, and that's what Elijah Mitchell was before he went down. And that's why Elijah Mitchell was so effective. And then when he wasn't, the run game is ineffective, and you got to start relying on those those weird gadget plays, the rainbow motions that, like, I saw Juszczyk rainbow motion, and then he just stood behind the line and did absolutely nothing. So you're playing 9-on-11 football because Trey Lance is like not in the play either. And it's just like, what are you doing? These are not good play designs to me. The best play design that I saw was that run play was with Deebo Samuel when he ran for the touchdown, and they had Elijah Mitchell lined out wide on the outside. And it's like, that's a one where you're like, okay, is Deebo going to run out there and maybe there's a double reverse? Like, what are they going to do? Like, now your options are unlimited essentially, and you're keeping the defense on its toes. When you just blindly lined up Deebo Samuel in the backfield, the defense is like, okay, it's probably going to Deebo. Let's play the run. That's fine. At worst, you're getting a wheel route, and then you spy a linebacker on Deebo, and then it's fine. So I don't know. I think that if Marlon Mack is the best player, that's who Kyle's going to play, because that's what he's shown he's done before.
And it's going to be interesting to see how the Seahawks defense reacts to things like that formation you're talking about in particular, right? We heard Robert Saleh's thought on that. Anytime we were going to play the Seahawks, anytime we were going to play a team, what was it, Atlanta, I believe they had that year with what was the running back's name that was playing wide receiver and running back? Was it Cordell Patterson? Who was it?
Cordero Patterson.
Yes. Robert Saleh's theory was pretty basic, right? Like there's one ball. So we know that mentality comes from what he learned under Pete Carroll, right? We know that mentality is, look, like there's one ball. So we just play assignment type football. If your job is to contain, doesn't matter if it's the running back that has the ball or if it's a wide receiver that has the ball, you contain and let them come to you the way you're supposed to. So it'll be weird to see if we can kind of confuse that defense a little bit, and talking about that defense, everyone seems to be really excited that Jamal Adams is out. Personally, I'm not really excited about it. I think that actually might help their defense a little bit,
Jamal Adams is one of the most overrated players in the NFL in like the last decade. That dude is not good at coverage. He can come up and he can thump you, but he's a liability in coverage. They spent so much capital on that guy, and the Jets were just like, yes. They knew, right? And now he's been injury prone. So now you're looking at a guy who may, like, just by default, I mean, Jamal Adams is so bad in coverage that the next guy up is probably going to do a lot better. If you get half of the run stoppage of Jamal Adams, but you get double the coverage, I'm going to take that from a safety.
Exactly, right. And, I respect Greg Cosell probably more than most people do. And I heard him on KMBR yesterday, I believe it was yesterday. And when they asked him about Jamal Adams, he was like, he's not that good of a player. I've never heard him just come flat out and like dump on a player so like just directly before. He made it very clear. He was like, this guy is like a glorified Sam linebacker. It was just, pretty weird to hear him go out there and say that. And so that kind of lets you know even what the professionals think about him, not just our, opinions on him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who fills in for him and how well they play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Greg Cosell's an OG. Like, I love his draft breakdowns. I respect the hell out of him. He clearly does a lot of work. So Hung Fat says, I'm nervous for Sunday. Is this the biggest game of Trey Lance's career?
No, it's not. And basically because the game that he played against Houston, we had to win to keep our playoff hopes alive. Had we lost that game, we would have been mathematically, it would have been like a less than 5% chance of us. Like we needed a lot of teams to lose. And I think at that point we would have had to have someone tie. So, that was Trey Lance's biggest game of his career. And we saw Lance improve as the game went on. The first half started a little shaky, right? But then as the game went on, he seemed to gather his composure and all. So I think that was the biggest game of his career, especially not being as comfortable in the system and, not having the rapport with the starting team and things like that. Now, there's a lot of season left, and I don't think this is going to happen. But even if we were to fall 0-2, it's still 15 more games left where we can go ahead and, get things going. I heard Steve Young, again on KMBR, talk about, guys, don't get it twisted. Like, the first month of football is the preseason. He said most veterans don't play a lot in preseason and things like that. So, they use preseason for the rookies, for some second and third year guys to, get their legs under them. The veterans don't typically do that. He said the first month of football is really to get, gather your bearings. And then that's when the real teams afterwards start to show who they really are. So we're still in the learning phase here, guys. So we just have to see how it plays out.
Do you still think that there's no scenario in which Kyle Shanahan goes back to Jimmy Garoppolo?
I do not think Kyle Shanahan goes back to Jimmy Garoppolo under any circumstance other than injury.
I was on the fence about that, but I'm kind of leaning more towards that. Kyle was asked if he was still willing to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was on record as saying, yeah, we'll trade Jimmy. So that's, to me, that's good news. That doesn't mean to say that he's going to get traded. Let's just pay real close attention to how Cooper Rush does for the Dallas Cowboys, because that could really play a big role. Where do you think the 49ers can control this game against the Seattle Seahawks? Where is going to be their point of emphasis and what they need to do to really jump out and stick it down Seattle's throat early?
Run the ball. I think effective running, I know that goes kind of, without saying, but we have to get follow the fullback going. You know what I'm saying? Use Kyle Juszczyk for what he's out there for, what he's paid for. If we can run the ball, if we can control the clock, and make like on the offensive side of the ball in particular, right? If you look at the Broncos, their two top running backs combined for over 5 yards a carry. So that's something that screams to me, hey, this is a run game right here. The Seahawks were not that good stopping the run. It's just that there was a lot of catch up being played. And even though they weren't really down by a whole lot, I think they went in the halftime like 17-13, right? Like there was no need for them to start panicking, throwing the ball around as much as they were, especially like I said, on the 3rd and 1s and things like that. Run the ball well, keep yourself in 3rd and shorts, 3rd and manageables, and that way you can mix it up a little bit, and we'll be fine. I'm not saying that we're going to blow them out. I know that the line at one point was over 10. I think it's down to like 8.5 now or something crazy like that. Even that is a little bit high. You know what I mean? But I do think that we still go out here. We can control the clock and we can run this ball. And I think we're going to disrupt Geno Smith a lot more than what the Broncos did. But that's for the other side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where my point of emphasis was. Hit Geno Smith early, get him rattled early. The Geno Smith that we saw in that game against the Broncos was very, very efficient. Like, not explosive, but very, very efficient. And I just feel like that if the pass rush can get home, I think that Ward is going to be more than enough to stay in DK Metcalf's pocket, and Emmanuel Mosley and Tyler Lockett are going to be the ones that are kind of battling it out. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency from Womack. I think that there were some plays that he left on the field against Chicago. And I'd like to see more discipline for the defense overall. I don't think that Geno Smith is going to be able to break contain the way that Justin Fields was. So maybe that backside throw to Pettis isn't going to be there as much. But at the same time, there were plays that could have been cleaned up by the defense, and they just need to do that. Dre Greenlaw needs to be more disciplined. Just overall as a unit, if you can hit Geno Smith and get him rattled, he's going to be ripe for the picking, like legitimate actual interceptions all day long.
I thought I saw something earlier today that Womack is injured, but I'm looking at the injury report. It's not on here. I thought I saw something today about Womack being hurt, but I can't find it now. Maybe I was mistaken. But that's something to keep an eye on, and the 49ers did sign a corner with some return history recently. Now, again, I believe he was signed to practice squad though, not to the 53. So let me be very clear with what I'm saying. But that is something to keep an eye on for sure. Yeah, I don't see it on this injury report, and this one was from a couple of hours ago. Let me see if I can just search his name really quick.
So I think what you're referring to is a Nick Wagner report that said he was on the field but walked into the weight room before practice.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe that's what it was then. All right. Yeah. That's probably what it was then.
So I don't know if that's necessarily. He's not on the injury report. You'd think he would be if he was actually injured. It could just be something that they're trying to be just precautionary with him or whatever. But at the same time, they definitely have to, clean it up. They have to take what's given to them. And again, I don't think that Geno Smith has the escapability that Justin Fields has. So when the pass rush gets home, it's going to get home. There's going to be nowhere for him to go. He's not going to be outrunning Nick Bosa to the edge. He's not going to be outrunning, Drake Jackson or Eric Armstead. You got to hit him early. You got to hit him often. And I think that that's going to lead to him making a ton of mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the comment that you had up there. I don't know if you want to show this video on your feed or not. Yeah, that one there. I have the link if you want me to.
I think we've all seen it. I don't think I have a hard time believing that it's actually Trey Lance. It's very grainy video. And the lady, if you will, who is tying her shoes in front of allegedly Trey Lance, their hips are almost in perfect alignment. And Trey Lance is 6'4". So unless she's an unusually tall dancer, then I don't think that that's him.
Very well said. That's what I was going to say. And the other thing is too, like Trey Lance doesn't go anywhere without players from his team,
Right.
and there are none in this. So I am 99% sure that's not Trey Lance.
Right. And there's no, I mean, this is something that you see during the off season, right? If it was going to happen, it would happen in the off season. But you're coming off a loss. You're flying home from Chicago. You're doing film sessions on Monday, right? Practice again on Tuesday. Where's the time to actually do this stuff?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny, like a little troll like this can blow up so well. You got Ben Albright and other people with check marks retweeting it and laughing at it and things like that. And then the person who apparently posted this on their IG live was like, "Hey, give me my credit. This was before the game too, by the way." Like, come on, man. That was definitely not Trey Lance. So it's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. Somebody else is saying that there's other videos, but I've seen the one.
I haven't seen any other videos.
No, neither have I.
And I think that we would have seen them by now.
Right. I don't know, man. Even let's just say for the sake of argument that it was Trey Lance, like who cares?
Oh yeah, no, there was nothing inappropriate happening in the video at all. So let's be clear here. But it's going to add to the scrutiny that this kid is under, as if he the national media like has a big target on this kid, and they're going to try to say things like, "Well, he's not focused. That's why he can't do X, Y, and Z and all." And it's just not good. It's not good.
Right. I mean, it is what it is, bro. Like he's a 22-year-old kid. Like,
right.
Come on, man. So what's your thoughts on Bears lineman saying that Trent Williams has a tell on passing plays with the double kick?
Yeah, it is true. It's something that I've noticed it a long time ago. I just assumed that was his pass set. You know, I never paid attention to, you know, his pass or his kick on running plays. Normally he engages on run plays. You know what I mean? Unless it's you know what I'm saying? So you're stepping forward. So it's nothing that I thought was considered a tell, but it's definitely something that's very obvious. And then, you know, on a 7, if you're in shotgun and you're still dropping back, he kicks 3 times. And that's something that I can tell you without studying and breaking down a whole bunch of film. You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It was just kind of interesting that he was comfortable enough to go to the podium and say that.
Now, is this all pre-snap that he kicks?
No, he's talking about post-snap, like the way he kicks his kick step.
Okay.
That's why I said it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, that's different. I thought he was talking about like when he lined up, like he would kick his foot ahead of the play. Man, listen, if that's the tell that you have because Trent Williams plays a certain technique to be man, good on you for noticing that shit. Because like after the play has started, like you got to know one way or another. You know, like that's a quick adjustment time. Because if you're talking about even on a 7-step drop, you're talking about less than 3 seconds from drop back to throw in a lot of scenarios. Like, if you watch that kick 3 times and you can get by him and you can, good for you. You're a good player.
Right. Exactly. So I'm not overly concerned with it at all. You know, and speaking of, you know, Trent Williams, the offensive line didn't have as terrible of a game as what people were talking about. I don't know if you've seen any of the new reports and stuff like that coming out. They talked about the pressures allowed and things like that. Pressure is a finicky stat as it is, and it's still a good one. You know, do you affect the quarterback? Do you get him to move off of his mark? Yes, of course, that's going to happen, right? But hits and sacks, those numbers were down pretty low. So I'm not overly concerned with the offensive line, especially in what we were playing in. You know, this is going to be a good rebound game for the team. I think this is going to be one that they need. Not necessarily need to win, but they need to go out there and put together some good drives. You know, the results of those drives, who knows, right? We had one of our best drives of the entire game ended up with like a fumble inside the 5. So that doesn't mean that, you know, I want to see more good drives. The results of those drives, cool, you would love to get some points, but I want to see this team be methodical, show that they can control the clock and they don't look panicked and overwhelmed out there like what we saw the last 2 drives of the game in week 1.
How long do you think it takes for Deebo Samuel to round into form? Because we saw him drop passes, we saw him fumble the ball in the red zone, We saw him generally ineffective at separating from the cornerbacks. Where does Deebo Samuel sit for you right now, and where does he really need to step up and improve?
This is going to sound like hate, but that's Deebo Samuel. He's always led the team in drops. That's nothing unusual. And the weather's going to play, a factor into separation. Deebo is a very heavy-footed runner. And so when he's going to break down, it's clump, 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 and then cut, right? Those clumps are now slush, 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 and sliding. The separation is going to be even less than what it normally is. I'm not too concerned with Deebo. I think he's Deebo. I think Deebo comes in ready to play, and he's going to be consistent for better or worse. That's going to include a drop a game, or you know what I mean? It's going to include some good runs, going to include some runs that are very obvious and get stuff for nothing, or maybe even a short loss. But that's Deebo. That's the give and take in a player that plays with that kind of style.
Do you think they run out Danny Gray this week?
Yes, I do.
I do too. I think he was missing from the formula, and I think that late on in the game, it was very apparent. If you're running routes with Danny Gray, that even on that deep pass that Juwan Jennings got open on, Danny Gray, that's 7. Like, you're looking at a touchdown. Instead it was Juwan Jennings who actually kicked the back of his own heel and had to slow up enough where he got pushed out of bounds, right? Danny Gray, I mean, you're firing that ball at the field. I even think that the pass play to Croft was a little bit more of a situation where Trey Lance was like, dang, I thought he was going to be faster than that.
Yeah, it's like, man, if that was Kittle, or man, if that was Dwelly, right? Like,
right.
That's 7 right there.
Now, that's not to say that, Trey Lance should have put that ball up the field rather than to the sideline, but that's neither here nor there. Croft had to turn around. I think if Trey was watching where the route was kind of going, he could have hit Croft to the inside, and Croft probably would have scored. But on that outside throw with somebody who's more athletic, like you said, Dwelly or Kittle, they're getting there, and they're at least getting a hand on that ball.
Right. And that's what you want to see, I think the bigger question is, you asked when Deebo's going to arrive. When do we see this team together? When do we see Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle all out there at the same time? I asked that question heading into the season, over under on 6.5 games, and it's not looking good so far. I wouldn't expect Kittle to play this game. I expect him to play I expect him to play the word game and kind of tease it out there and dangle it out there as bait. But they made a mistake, in my opinion. They were like, Kittle's just as optimistic about this week as he was last week. Well, we saw where that got us. I wouldn't have said that at the podium. You know what I'm saying? I would. That's not what I would have said if I expected it. If I'm trying to trick a team into thinking he's playing.
At the very least, you got to say Kittle feels better about this week or whatever. I would expect that Kittle's back for week 3, prime time against the Broncos. I mean, that's the type of game that you would expect him to come back for. I think that's what it's looking like. The Car Gods put this up. This is something that I wanted to address too, that it's so baffling to me. Trey Lance missed a handful of open receivers. That shit can't happen at this level with the short amount of games. Now, what I will say is Trey Lance seems to make the hard throws look easy and the easy throws look really hard. And it's so ass backwards to me. I think that Trey Lance actually has a blind spot when it comes to being able to throw a screen pass. I think they should just rip those out of the playbook, because he was bouncing balls off of dudes that were like 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. Like, he's airmailing it. I think it has something to do with his footwork. I don't think that he can turn his body like that and just fire one out there. I don't think that that's a consistent throw for him. What do the 49ers have to do to maximize what Trey Lance does well while being able to slowly and incrementally improve on what he seems to struggle at, which is those short passes within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage?
I'm going to reserve judgment on that. What you said is accurate, right? And it was blatant. I mean, there was a 4th and 1 to Juice, and it just sailed like high out of bounds, right? But that ball is heavier. The rain was coming down really, really bad. I'm gonna reserve a little bit of judgment, and I get it, right? These are the short passes, though, Mike. Why can't he get those? But Trey Lance also throws the spots. So some of the short passes that he did hit, I'm thinking, man, if this goes over the middle, these guys are gonna get killed. And he throws a lot of them low, so his guys don't get killed, right? But if you're trying to throw it low and the ball is heavy, and you can't quite set your feet for whether it be the rain or your body limitations or whatever, it's gonna come out for an ugly ball. So I want to see in this game less precipitation, right? I want to see in a game or two when we're playing and it's sunshine. You know what I mean? Like I want to see those things before I can fully, just speak, definitively on what he can and can't do, his limitations and all, because I do believe those are the kind of things he worked on. We sat around and we said all the time, if Trey Lance can give us what Jimmy did with his athletic ability to make a play or two more, then we're good. I don't think Kyle makes the change if he didn't have confidence that he could do those small things, which are a big part of this offense. For the last 3 years, we were running around yelling yak bros, right? The reason it's yak is because the ball's not being delivered 40 yards down the field. It's being delivered, -2 to 7 yards down the field, and those guys are doing all the work afterwards. I don't think that all of a sudden just gets thrown out. Now, screen passes are very different. They're usually right to the sideline. It's a quick snap and you got to turn quickly. So I understand what you were saying on that. But even the passes over the middle and stuff like that, we saw him bounce some of those, a couple of yards short and at people's feet. I want to see how that looks now.
Yeah. And here's the thing I will say too. I think that Johnny armchair quarterback like us, we go, man, screen pass, that shit's easy. But I played quarterback in high school. That you got to throw it on a dart. The field is 50 yards wide, which means if you're standing in the middle and you're throwing it to the sideline, you're firing a 23-yard pass on a line, right? And you got to put it in a spot real quick, turning your body to the side. It's not the easiest throw in the world, and I think he can get better at them. I just think that it's really interesting to me that on those deep crossers, or there was on the OPI to Ayuk that he caught on the sideline where he he finger tapped him or whatever. That was a 15-yard out on a bullet, perfectly on the money, right? Those are the type of throws where I'm just like, dang, man, like if he could just hit this like all the time, if he could hit these passes even on the simple ones, like you see the talent, you see the raw ability is there, and that if he can just refine it, he's going to be really, really special. It's really interesting to me. I would wager to bet that he's probably going to hit one of those 50-yard bombs this week, if like a fly pattern to Danny Gray. It's going to be a 60-yard touchdown or whatever. I'm willing to bet that happens this week.
And I will say this, even if they don't, for whatever strange reason, even if they decide not to dress Gray, I think we see one of those to McLeod. I do think that they, Kyle even mixed that. I think McLeod had the longest reception. I believe it was McLeod that had the longest reception of the day for us in the last game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it with him, even if they don't dress Danny Gray. I think Kyle has to incorporate that now. Make teams respect.
What I'd like to see is what we saw a lot from the offense with Jimmy last year, where he just couldn't hit it. But if you're talking about getting somebody involved who can be a difference maker in the offense, Kyle Juszczyk, man, wheel routes, get him out there. He had a ton of those where he's just wide open, and I think that Trey is going to be able to hit those, whereas Kyle wanted Jimmy to hit those last year, and Jimmy just couldn't do it. I think that if you send Trey out there to hit those with Kyle Juszczyk, that you're looking at just, again, sweetening the pot, getting easy throws, building Trey's confidence, letting him go out there and get positive plays, and you stack and you stack and you stack. And then pretty soon, confidence is high. He's not overthinking things. He's not like, oh, I've made too many mistakes today, I can't really do that. Then he's just letting it fire, and he's being an instinctual player. And that's where the most improvement, I think, is going to come for him, where he doesn't have to just break it down and go 1, 2, throw to the outside, keep it low, keep it low, keep it low, keep it low. Those type of things. Because when you have the sailed pass to Juszczyk on the sideline, or you do dart one in front of Deebo Samuel, that starts to get in your head. And I know that Perry put this up here on the screen and was talking about even a throw in baseball from second base to first base can look easy and it can get messed up. There was a famous Yankees player, Chuck Knobloch, who got a case of the yips and could not throw from second to first base to save his life. He would fire the ball 30 rows back in the crowd, and it's literally 25 feet away, and he would just fire the ball into the crowd. When you start overthinking it, you start to develop these bad habits that just make it worse. You compound the mistakes. You make things even worse than they would be if you just let it go, And I think that that's something that Kyle needs to work on. Play calling needs to get better to put Trey in proper position. Roll him out on bootlegs. Make him only work. This is a young QB staple 101, right? Roll them out on boot action and make them only read half of the field. and you make their job easier. Those are things that Kyle can do that I don't feel like he did in the rain. And I think the rain really fucked with how Kyle wanted to call plays.
And so much so, I was listening to Eric Armstead on KMBR, and they were like, "How'd you guys, feel about the rain when it was happening and all that stuff?" And he was like, "I'll be honest, we all expected the rain. We knew it was going to rain. We didn't think it was going to rain like that. None of us did. Our preparation throughout the week didn't say that it was going to be raining like that, and so that is going to change the type of plays that you call, how much you have your quarterback spinning and turning, and because now you can't guarantee." The blocks are going to be, well, you can't ever guarantee it, right? But you can't guarantee the blocks are going to be held the way they're supposed to, or you can reroute rushers. I've seen games where a team will let the tackle, right, the right tackle would feel like he got beat, but what he's doing is making the guy come around the edge even wider so that the quarterback can step up in that area so he can throw it that way. You can't guarantee any of those things in that kind of weather. So, again, it sounds like I'm saying this game was a mulligan, right? And obviously it's not. We're 0-1. But I just have a hard time just convicting anybody on anything. Even the good stuff, by the way, right? Like like Elijah Mitchell's running in that game. He seemed like, wow, like welcome back, kid, right? Like how much of that was because the Bears couldn't tackle the way they were supposed to? They couldn't get their footing right. So it works both ways. It's not just a one-sided, like all the negative, ignore it, and all the positive, let's dwell on that. That's not what I'm saying at all. You know what I mean? So those guards getting to the second level, they made it look easy. They would assist with the center, and they get to the second level. They were really slippery out there, So I liked what I saw, but you got to take it all with a grain of salt. That game was a one-off. Week 1, for the most part, was a massive one-off. Like this was a week
definitely.
1, like unlike any I've seen before. That was crazy.
Yeah. And I think that has to do with this new, the way the preseason rolled out, the new 17-game schedule, the fact that, most teams had the 3 preseason games inside of 3 weeks, like the 17 days or whatever, with the 10 days in between. It just got really weird for a lot of teams. And I think that it was, the 49ers were a perfect example where this guy plays week 1, he's not playing week 2. Maybe he doesn't play as much week 3. And then you get a 10-day layoff and it's like, well, you have, not enough reps. Or a guy like Trent Williams who had no reps, or, in the preseason, where you're trying to gel a young, unproven offensive lineman with one of the best in the game. And I think that people underestimate how much communication has to go on between the offensive linemen. You have to understand your gap assignments. You have to understand where you're going, who's handing off to who, who's firing to the second level on which play, and where you're going from there. And it's very complicated. And like you said, the rain just compounds that. I don't think I've ever seen a game before where they had to put up the contrast on the numbers, because the water was so reflective on TV that they actually had to make the numbers black so that you could see the numbers on the field. There were points in the game where you couldn't even read the numbers on the players' jerseys because the water was so, it was all over the place. The camera was so saturated with the water on the lens that you couldn't make out the players. I've never seen that before. And it just happened to come at the point, and this is why all these national media people will look at Trey and go, Trey sucked. It's why these pieces of shit like Mike Martz, who was an overrated coach, who got his entire team from Dick Vermeil and squandered it and never got another real coaching opportunity. I know he coached somewhere else, but he was trashed there too, right? You're living off the back of somebody else, and you come out and you go, I never liked Trey Lance. He was never good, because you're looking at a stat line where more than half of Trey Lance's attempts came in a torrential downpour where you couldn't throw the ball. That's the thing that, it's hard to sit there and judge Trey Lance off of that 1 week, but people in the national media are going to try. And that's why I feel like, coming out and going to, into week 2, that Trey Lance is going to be able to shut some people up. And whether he went to a strip club or whether he went to the film room or whatever, this is his time to shine, and everybody else can kind of fuck off. You know what I mean?
Well done, man. Well done. That Mike Martz shit, it was more telling about him and his real thoughts than it was his football analysis. I'm not going to say any more than that. You guys can read into it what you want. I'm not going to say any more, but yeah, your true colors are shining through, buddy. So I'd lay off the juice before talking to people about sports where you can be recorded or whatever.
All right, jumping back into this game, we're going to start wrapping it up here. This is a preview show. I got to work another 12 tomorrow at the hospital, so I got to go to sleep soon. And it's well past midnight where you're at. So, going into the game, what are your 3 keys to victory for the 49ers?
You want all 3? Or are we going to ping pong off of each other? How you want to do it?
Yeah, we can do one at a time and see what's going on. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm going to start with cohesion on the offensive line. You mentioned it when you were speaking earlier, right? We want to see the communication get better. It's not that it was super loud out there in Chicago. However, you could tell that there was a lot of stuff going on. You could see the heads popping up and turning and looking. I would love to see this offensive line go out there with confidence. We have our footing here. We're now in control. We're going to be able to do what we need to do. And like I said, I liked what I saw from the interior of the offensive line. I like what I saw from the offensive line in general. I would love for that to finally pay dividends now. We're going to go out there. We're going to play well. We're going to hold up as well as we should. And then we'll see what actually happens afterwards. So I'm going to start there with the offensive line. Big key to victory there. If they can do what I know that they can do, let me rephrase that. If they do what I think they can do, we'll be good. This game will never get out of hand, and I think we'll be at least close enough to win the game at the end, at worst case scenario.
I agree with that. To piggyback off that, I think one of my keys to the game is somebody on the 49ers needs to have more carries and more yards than Trey Lance, whether that be TDP, whether that be Jordan Mason, whether that be Marlon Mack if he's active on game day. If the offensive line can be a more cohesive and more dynamic group in their second game than they were in their first, with a little bit of more sure footing and a home crowd that's going to be behind them, getting a running back out there that can take some of the pressure off of Trey Lance will just be a boon for this offense. It'll be a boon for the quarterback. It'll be a boon for Kyle Shanahan. We know that he likes to run to set up those easy passes. They need to be able to do that early and often to demoralize the Seattle Seahawks defense and to allow Trey Lance to feel comfortable in the pocket and not feel like he has to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, because not only did he have to pass against the Bears, he was the guy that was generally carrying the ball after Elijah Mitchell went out, and those Debo runs just weren't as effective. So get the running backs involved, be effective. That goes to your point about the offensive line coming together and having another week under their belt together and being more efficient. And I think that is going to be a huge plus for the 49ers and allow them to control the game. Number 2 for you, Mike.
Yeah, and on that really quick also, I got into it in the group chat. I was telling the guys, like, it's never good when your quarterback is your leading rusher, whether it's attempts or total yards, and I even used the sample of the Colin Kaepernick game against the Packers, right? Even in that game, Cap didn't have the most attempts. He ended up having the most yards because he had a couple of big ones over 50, right? But he didn't have the most attempts. Frank Gore had 23 in that game, and Kaepernick was still in the teens. So, a balanced attack with a running quarterback is way more dangerous than your running back, your quarterback being your leading running back. So I agree with you there. The second thing I wanted to say is I need to see more Brandon Ayuk. I know that sounds selfish. I'm talking about one player, right? But Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance supposedly spent all offseason together. We saw the rapport. We saw that ticky-tack penalty. He finished the game with 2 receptions for 20 yards or 40 yards. I'm sorry. It should have been at least 3 receptions for, 55, 60 yards, whatever. We have to see more of that. Whether Kittle's out there or not, Brandon Ayuk is supposed to be the first-round pick that no one's paying attention to. Right? Because you got the Deebo Samuel, because you got the George Kittle, because you have the highest paid fullback in the NFL, right? You got the speed demon and Danny Gray. Who's the guy that's going to be left on his own for the most part to really go out there and make something happen? It's going to be Brandon Ayuk. It's going to be the guy that you spent this entire offseason with. I almost tried to click something. I don't have the controls here, but your milk dud. That's what you called him, right? My milk dud, right? Like, go out there and Kyle has to say, all right, We don't have to
Wait,
be as
do you have a
predictable.
graphic for Milk Dud? Were you going to push something that would bring like a Milk Dud on the
Yeah,
screen?
it's the
Okay.
actual no, it's the video when
The
he
candy
was sitting
box,
on the
right?
chair.
Oh, okay, I got you. The video where he
From
called him the Milk Dud. Yeah.
yeah. I have that on our StreamYard thing there. But yeah, so it's like you got to go out there and make this happen because I'm gonna tell you, the earlier you establish Brandon Ayuk as a real threat, defenses start to lose their mind. Well, shit, is it Debo's game? Is it Brandon Ayuk? Is it Kittle now? Is it gonna be Trey Lance running if we try to cover all of them at the same time? Or what about that kid Danny Gray and the deep guy? Safety stay over there with him. All of a sudden, the defense goes from playing like this to playing like this. And now you can dink and dunk down the field all you want, but you have to establish Brandon Ayuk early. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think part of the problem in Chicago was, again, the weather plays a huge part, right? Because as Debo Samuel likes to work close to the line of scrimmage and then work in space and open up, I think Brandon Ayuk's strength is as an intermediate route runner, right? He's the guy that's going to run the 15-yard out. He's the guy that's going to run the crosser or the dig or whatever. And when you played in those wet conditions and you had an offensive line that wasn't gelling, I don't think that Trey Lance had enough time and Ayuk didn't have enough time to really complete those route trees that he was running and allow him to maximize what he was doing, right? And to that point, I think my second point for the 49ers is for Trey Lance to be able to attack the Seattle defense on 3 levels, right? You need to work close to the line of scrimmage. You got to get the ball to Debo close to the line of scrimmage, allow him to work in space. That'll open things up with good field position or good field conditions for Brandon Ayuk to work those intermediate routes. If Brandon Ayuk's working those intermediate routes and you have Danny Gray or you have Ray McLeod in good, now you have the deep ball over the top. They have to attack in all 3 levels of the game. And that goes back to point number 1. It starts with the run where the defense can't cheat, where the defense can't force Trey Lance to beat them in, unideal situations. And I think that if they can attack on those 3 levels, and a lot of this is going to be when Kittle comes back too, which will really help because Kittle is a really good short to intermediate route runner as well. But this is where Kyle Juszczyk comes into play. You get Kyle Juszczyk on these wheel routes. And now all of a sudden, if you're running, even if you're running one tight end, a running back and the fullback with Juszczyk and you have 2 wide receivers or whatever, you're going to be able to still attack on 3 levels from an I formation just because you have that playmaker in your backfield. Mix up the formations, mix up the personnel, but just attack at all levels of the defense. I think that'll be key. Mike, what's your last if you want to respond, that's fine too.
No. You said it really well. You got to be able to do it, and that goes into spreading the ball out and things like that. So spreading the defense out. I'm getting a little foggy over here. Sorry about that. My last one is going to be the linebackers. All right, you got to have a bounce back game, but you also have to make Geno Smith afraid. If I told you that DK Metcalf had 7 catches, not targets, 7 catches in a game, you would never think that he had less than 60 yards. He's too big. He's too fast for that, right? If I told you Tyler Lockett had 3 receptions in a game, you would never think that he had less than 30 yards, right? He's just too savvy of a vet, right? He's just too good for that. Geno Smith isn't going to throw deep on us. One, because our defensive line is too good to allow him to let those kind of plays develop, unless it's one of those quick things where he floats one out there and someone's just running underneath it to catch it, right? Where you throw into a spot, not a person, and sees what happened. That's not going to happen often. So that means that the corners are going to be okay. The safeties are going to be okay. What we need to do is cover the middle of the field well, confuse him, and use that speed that we have at the linebacker position. And when they do come across the middle, you got to pop them and you got to make them pay. If those linebackers have a good game, like, I hate to say this, but like that's how the defense is going to go. As the linebackers go, the defense will go. That's, to me, is going to be what ties it all together. I don't think it's a coincidence that our linebackers had a bad game, had a meltdown, and we end up losing a game that we should have won.
Yeah, I agree. I think that my third key is to play with discipline on defense, right? You want to be aggressive, but play with discipline. And I think it was Haberman and Middlecoff were talking about how Alshire and Greenlaw are really a throwback to Bowman and Willis in that they play very physical football. They're very aggressive, and that's a very 2010 to 2012 type of linebacker play. And they need to play with more discipline, break it down and tackle. What they were saying was, you see Hufanga and you see Warner, and they go up and they will pop people for sure, but they're never so out of control that they get penalized for it, right? Bosa, another guy that will hit you extremely hard, but's not getting flagged for that type of stuff. You have to play aggressively, but within control of your own body. And I think that if the 49ers defense can come out and clean up so many of the mistakes that they had last week, they can really take over this game. And again, make Geno Smith really uncomfortable. Like you said, DK Metcalf, way too big, way too fast, way too strong to get 7 catches in less than 60 yards. That's the limitation of a Geno Smith-led offense. And if you can make him uncomfortable, it's going to be even less than that, because he's not going to have the completion percentage that he had against the Broncos. It's going to be far worse. And when Geno Smith is under duress, all of a sudden, maybe he sails one, maybe one gets tipped. And that's when you get the interception. That's when you get the strip sack. That's when you get Geno Smith doing things that you don't want, that Seattle doesn't want Geno Smith to do, because Geno Smith is at a caliber of quarterback, no matter what happened against the Broncos, right? Anybody coming out of that game going like, Geno Smith is better or whatever than Russell Wilson, because he, I know people are putting up the Geno Smith quote, which I think he took from somebody else, where he's like, they wrote me off, but I didn't write back or whatever. Okay, cool, man. I think that was from like a rapper or something. I'm pretty sure, right? It was I'm pretty sure I know who the rapper is, but I can't think of it. Anyway, he put that out there, but at the same time, it's just like, dude, one game. Don't feel it yourself yet. It took you how many years to get this starting opportunity? And it's only because Drew Lock is so bad that he basically handed you the job. If he didn't get that from a rapper, it's a pimpin' quote.
It looks like Lil,
that right
it says Lil Peep. I okay. Googled it and Lil Peep popped up right away. So I don't know if that's
so. I mean, maybe he's a fan of that rapper and he just he boosted the lyrics or whatever. Hey, But at the same time, let's not pretend like Geno Smith is this world beater, right? I think I know. Geno Smith, the most that I know about him was that he got knocked out in his locker room back with the Jets.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I know Geno Smith for.
Yep. Yeah, man. So that's where
cool
we
and
are
all,
right
cool and all. But hey, listen, when you're not amped up to beat Russell Wilson because he's coming, he's facing you for the first time, and you got your. Listen, as good as Denver's pass rush is. Or was, it's Chubb, and then it's not a lot else, right?
Right.
They don't roll deep like the 49ers do.
Right.
This can be a different thing.
I completely agree with you. And then the to top it off, I know you asked this question at the top of it. Is this the biggest game of Trey Lance's career? And I said no. I do think that last week was the biggest game of Geno Smith's career. And you can take that for what it's worth. And you see he barely did anything in the second half. So kind of blew his load and was stuck dealing with what was left over afterwards.
Now, here's an interesting question. Before we get into, we're going to get into offensive and defensive players of the week and offensive, defensive MVP, and then we're going to get into the final score predictions. Here's a question. Do you think that the 49ers would be more willing to trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the Seahawks after this game, given that they don't play them again until late in the season?
I have been one of those people that said, I don't think they're worried about him at all going to Seattle. But I could see that happening now, more than ever, especially if Geno comes out there and throws for, 110 on 30 attempts. They're going to be like, shit, dude, guys, like we're really, really in trouble here. Like, let's get somebody else that can come in here and do what we need them to do, because he threw for 195, right? He only had 5 incompletions, 23 for 28, 195 and 2 touchdowns. But one of those touchdowns, I don't know if you saw it, like there was no one there. Like it was like the most beautiful gimme ever. So that's not sustainable. I know that you might get one of those every 3 games. That's not sustainable. So I don't think that it's going to happen often. they're going to be in trouble. And I think the Niners wouldn't mind. Like Kyle said, when they asked him about trading him to the Cowboys, we hate the Cowboys. Niner fans hate the Cowboys just as much as we hate Seattle, probably more, right? And Kyle's like, yeah, hell yeah, I'd ship his ass if they called us and the offer was right. Yeah, we'd send them over there. Why not? I don't think they hesitate to send them over to, I heard all the 49er talking heads saying, oh, the reason they didn't cut Jimmy is because they didn't want him to go to Seattle. They didn't want him to go to Seattle. Maybe there's some truth to that at the time, right? I don't want to send you to Seattle with a month to tell them my entire offensive scheme. It's Pete Carroll. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why they kept him away from the locker room and didn't give him a playbook and all those rumors that were happening. But after this game, like you said, there's a little bit of time between the next time we play him and then, yeah, I think we'll be okay. Trey Lance will be hitting the stride by then. The defense will be very confident, and they know Jimmy better than Jimmy knows them. I say, yeah, it's not a big deal.
Well, and you're not just static either. Your install doesn't stop because you reach the regular season.
Right.
They can ship Jimmy out and they can continue to install plays, and there's going to be stuff that Jimmy hasn't seen because this is running an offense in a different way. I think that it would behoove the 49ers, and I think that they know this, that if there is an opportunity to take the pressure off of Trey Lance and trade, they're waiting to get something for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's what they're doing. Right. And what they want to do is they want to match whatever comp pick that they could potentially get if Jimmy Garoppolo leaves. And if they can do that, they're going to ship him away. I think that's clear. Yep. T advice. Did you see the video of Trey Lance? Yes, we saw it. Kind of unprofessional considering how bad he's been playing. Let me tell you something. There's nothing unprofessional. If you do your obligations and you do your duty and you do your diligence, you're not just living for football, okay? We've all been to a titter. We've all been, right? You've been, right, Mike?
Oh, of course.
He said, of course. I mean, I've been one time, right? That was enough for me, but, I don't need to pay to see boobies. I get them for free. But
no, I've been to more bachelor parties in the last 5 years than
right. I mean, yeah. And by the way, it's too easy to judge the context or judge a video with no context. We don't know the context. We don't even know that it was officially Trey Lance.
It
right?
was not.
I don't know 100%. I don't feel like it was either. I don't think the body proportion matches. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, again, Trey Lance is 6'4". So if that stripper was like 5'11", then maybe, right? But I don't think so. We don't. And here's the other thing, too. This is a very good point by 91649er. When was that video? What if that was a video just in the offseason, even if it was Trey Lance, where he's just like, whatever. We see the work that Trey Lance puts in, right? We saw he went and worked with quarterback coach. He was the last guy, out of the building, the first guy in it. He was the one that was gathering Brandon Ayuk and gathering all these players to, work on his passing and work on everything else. He was the guy that went to tight end U or whatever. And what was it? Tight end university or whatever with George Kittle and was out there throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. So he works hard, that is what it is.
And they want us to pretend like he was somewhere all of a sudden without any teammates around in a room like that.
Said, stop lying. Listen, okay. So I can tell this story real quick. This could be a weird story, but the one time that I went was for my bachelor party, right? And my wife told her brother, she was like, dude, take Matt to a strip club. He just refuses to go. He won't go. And so we went. And so I'm, whatever. The only thing that I know about the club or whatever is that, I know what I saw on TV, right? Don't touch the girls. That's all I know. So I'm sitting like this, like arms, like I'm just sitting here stone faced, like just sitting rigid as a board, like just chilling. Right. And then the girl goes, are you feeling uncomfortable or whatever? And I was like, no, I'm just trying to follow the rules. Right. Like I've never been to one before. I'm just trying to follow the rules or what. I don't want to break any rules here. And she grabs one of my hands, puts it on her boob, grabs the other one, puts it on her ass, and leans into my ear and goes, I'll let you know when you're breaking the rules. And I was like, God damn it. And I look over and my brother-in-law is just cackling his ass off. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. I must have turned like beet red because I was so embarrassed, bro. It was crazy.
Yep. No, I completely understand, man. It's It is what it is. It is at the end of the day, it's a massive waste of money, but I also understand how guys go to just blow steam. It's a waste of money for a person like me. If I've got millions and millions in the bank, maybe it's a
I'll tell
different
you
form
what
of
though,
entertainment.
I've had more than one person come to me and say, "Hey, go ahead and get yourself a ribeye or get yourself some chicken wings at a strip joint," and it's like bomb
Yeah.
food.
Well, there's this place out here, out here in Jersey, and there's one in New York also. They have really good oxtail. I don't know if you ever had oxtail or anything like that, but man, the
No, I'm
oxtail
down
on
though. I
Friday,
would do it.
oh my God, it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal, man. Let me tell you. Like you can get good food at those places for sure. You got to have something to entice people to come back. You can get TNA anywhere.
Yeah,
You can see TNA anywhere. So
anywhere.
now, what's bringing you back?
He said Matt is at a strip joint. All he's concerned about is following the rules. Bro, were you a was I a hall monitor? No, man, but I was military, so we follow rules.
Imagine getting kicked out of a strip club because you literally can't keep your hands to yourself. Like that's
Right.
terrible.
That's the thing. And I listen, part of the reason why I never went was just because like I respect girls and that's somebody's daughter, and I didn't even want to think about that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that was part of it. Anyways, we've sidetracked enough. Uh offensive and defensive MVPs. Mike, start with your offensive MVP.
I'm gonna have to go with. All right, I got one for you, Jake Brindell. How's that?
Okay.
All right, I
All
think
right.
I saw a short, brief presser with him, and I'll be honest with you, man. After watching him speak, I know this sounds crazy, right? After watching him speak, I had a lot more faith in him. I don't know why. It wasn't the message; it was the way he just held himself and conducted himself. Seemed very confident, but also like not full of himself. Where it's like, I'm the man, I'm the starter. Like you guys know what's going on here. And so I'm going to go Jake Brindell. I think he comes in here. I think he calls a very good game for and with our young quarterback in Trey Lance. And I think they go out there and pick that defense apart. Jake
All
Brindell for the
right.
dub.
All right. I like it. I like it. I'm going to go it's kind of low hanging fruit, and I'm going to be the obvious guy, but I think Trey Lance, man. I think that he has a bounce back game. I think he has at least one of those large, massive plays that really excites. But moreover, I think that he's just going to be more consistent, be able to extend drives more. I don't think that he's going to need to run as much. And I think that he can, get himself 2 or 3 touchdowns throwing the football. And I think that if he can do that, this is a step in the right direction, and it sets him up on a really good path to go into Sunday Night Football in week 3 and really compete with the Broncos team that, has a lot of talent, but could potentially be vulnerable. So Trey Lance for me. Defensive MVP for you, Mike.
Defensive MVP for me is going to be Aziz Al-Shair. I talked about the importance of the linebackers. I would go with the obvious one of Fred Warner, but I think one of those guys have to have a bounce back game. I'm going to go with Aziz coming in with the clutch and a turnover. So I'm going to go with Aziz. Let's do it.
All right. Anybody who's followed us knows that I'm going to keep saying it until this shit happens. Day in, day out, week in, week out. Nick Bosa, 3 sacks and a forced fumble. This is what's going to happen. I will speak it into existence. It's going down. With that being said, Mike, final score predictions for 49ers Seahawks.
I do not think the 49ers cover this 8.5 point spread, but I do think that they win convincingly. In order to cover a spread by that much, you have to have this killer instinct, and I don't think Kyle's going to do it, especially if it is raining again. Not that it's going to be raining the way that it was, but I think we do jump out to an early 2-score lead. I can see us, 10 nothing and then 10-3, then we score again 17-3. But I think that the Niners just take their foot off the gas as long as they're in control. Now, maybe Kyle learned a little something from this week. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. But I don't think he's going to go out there and just put the whole shebang together. It's very, very few times I've seen him play a full game like that. Even that game where we blew out the Panthers, it was like 51 to, what was it, like 8 or something like that, whatever that score was in that game, right? He kind of laid off later on. If it weren't for the running backs going crazy, you can't stop them from running, right? But he wasn't dialing up passing plays or anything like that. I'm going to go 49ers. Let's go 24-17. 24-17.
All right. And I see Ian Sharp and the Car Gods have both put their predictions in the chat. I just want to let you know before I give you mine that we have yet to have somebody get it exactly right. If you post in the comments here, post it on the video YouTube afterwards, post it, send it to us, tweet it to our socials. If you pick the correct score for the game, you can win some 49ers Hive merch. We are going to give that to you. Again, nobody's gotten it right so far, but please comment that down below. We will figure it out. I do agree with you. I think that the line is a little bit rich. I think that it's a little bit high. I do think that the 49ers are able to come out and have a better offensive showing than they did last week. So I'm going to take the 49ers over the Seahawks at home 26-20. I think that they're able to control the clock even more than they did. I mean, they controlled time of possession against the Bears, outgained them, did all this stuff, right? They just weren't able to make the plays when it counted. There were some mistakes. I think they cleaned it up this week and are able to actually capitalize on some of those opportunities. So 26-20, 49ers for me. Mike, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, guys, just remember, man, I said it week one. I'm going to say it again. Marathon, not a sprint. Do not expect to see the finished product in week 2. And, by the way, this was the show I said it on. If there was a game the 49ers were going to lose, it was going to be that game last week. If there was one of the ones that we felt like this is the one, this is a gimme. But I said if we ended up losing that game and we realized that, that secondary was a little suspect, or, the offensive line didn't quite play the way it was, and Trey Lance seemed a little out of sorts, doesn't have the chemistry down. I sat there and ran through. I said, this is going to be the game where you'd be like, you know what? I kind of understand that. That did not include the monsoon, right? I don't think the Niners lose this game. This one I feel way, way, way more confident in. But even with that being said, we are not going to be perfect. We strive for perfection on a daily basis, knowing that we can never attain it or achieve it. So just keep that in mind. Be patient. Watch the game. Cheer for your team. I'm going to be out there in the rain getting soaking wet, but I'm going to have a good time, and hopefully
that's right. You're going to be at this game. You're going to be at this game. That's awesome, man. I hope you have a good time. Lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Pickup, and especially to MyBookie. If you go to Mybookie.com, use the code Hive, pick one of their outstanding prop bets. I usually like some of the weirder ones out there. They're there for you. They're running a promotion with us. If Zach was here, he could tell you better than I could, but please, please, please go to mybookie.com. They've been great to us. We want to be great to them. Thank you so much to mybookie.com. Mike, all that's left is to do it. They got to go out there. They got to kick some ass. They got to, take some names. And we're only a couple days away from the bounce back game for the 49ers, the home opener. You'll be there in person. I'll be there in spirit watching on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's nowhere to go but up.
It's the one game. You win and you get first place. Your first win, but you win first place for the season. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Doesn't get much better than that. And, it's something to build off of. Just, again, stat good plays, stat good games. And before you know it, I mean, the 49ers were 3-5 last year and rattled off 7-2 for their last 9. So anything can happen, but what you need to do is make positive plays. Build yourself a positivity ladder, and it's going to take you places. Mike, before we get out of here, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, guys, the Twitter handle's right here. Mike Andrews 83. You guys can follow me over there. And Nothing But Niners will officially be back Sunday night. So if you guys want, you guys can go follow me over there. Nothing But Niners, NB9ERS, like it says on the flag behind me. NB9ERS on Twitter. You guys can follow me over there. I'll be there. I'll probably be doing a really, really late show because I have a super late flight. My flight doesn't leave until like 11:30, and then I got a layover in Atlanta. So because all the other flights are like 3 or 4 o'clock, and I'm like, that means I got to leave the game early, like super early. There's no point in me going to the game. I got to get to the airport. And I'm like, no. So
I flew into Atlanta when I was in the military, and that place is cavernous. They got a dope USO though. The USO there is legit. Oh yeah, that airport's huge. Huge airport. I think it's one of the I think it's the busiest airport in the world.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think that's
so it's a huge it's a Delta hub, right? That's where Delta flies out of mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I wish you safe travels, man. I hope the game is as great in person. We're gonna see a game together in December. I can't wait for that. But I hope you have a really good time, man. It's gonna be legit.
Thanks,
You can follow me at Mr. Matt BSN. You can follow my boy Zach at Zach Hernan on Twitter. Follow us at 49ers Hive, Red and Gold Standard Podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I just want to say we love having you here. Every time you guys join us, we have great shows. We have a great time. Thank you for all your participation. I love it. With that being said, there's only one thing left to say, right, Mike? Go Niners, baby.